Hey, I'm Tom.
And I'm John.
And we're the co-founders of handsomefrank illustration agency.
In this series, we'll be sitting down and talking to our illustrators, finding out more about them, their artistic process, and the creative industry we work in.
Welcome to our podcast. Hi, John.
I always start the podcast.
Yeah, well, I just started it.
I know you did, but you know,
What's wrong with that?
it's just a funny realization I've just had.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom.
How are you?
I'm good. So podcast time.
Again.
And we've just been for a really nice lunch.
Yes, it's another one of those. We always have this thing of, should we do the podcast before or after the lunch? And it's you always get that kind of post-food slump, which I don't know is the best with podcasts, but
We're going to fight that. We're going to fight the Negronis with caffeine because we're very happy to have a guest today who has come all the way from Dundee
yeah.
and is going back the same day. Welcome to the podcast, Molly McCammon.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm really
No problem
excited for
at all.
this.
Did I pronounce your surname right then?
I think you did, yeah.
Okay.
Molly McCammon.
Just need a bit more of an accent.
McCammon.
Yeah, it definitely works better with the Scottish accent.
So, just quickly, logistics. You left home at what time this morning?
I got off at 4 a.m. and my train was at 5. We got here at 10:30, so it's not too bad.
And
Not
then you're
too
going
bad.
back
Sounds awful.
tonight on a sleeper train.
I am 9 p.m, so yeah, it's a...
Have you ever been on a sleeper train before?
No, I'm very excited to experience it, take photos and tell you all about it afterwards.
So who is it? Agathe. She did the sleeper train down to the south of France last year with young children. No one got any sleep.
No one
whatsoever.
slept.
Oh, don't tell me that now.
No, it's not. It's
not romantic.
The non-sleeper train.
I've done a sleeper train to Prague from Vienna.
Okay.
But that was a long time ago. But I think Scottish Highlands on a sleeper train is definitely on the list for me.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be sleeping after all this coffee today anyway.
You can offset it with more Negronis at Euston before you set off.
Absolutely. There's an idea.
Thank you so much for coming down, and thank you for doing it in a day, which is quite full on. But yeah, we're delighted to have you on the podcast. How long have we been working together now? Is it less than a year?
Yeah, it must be less than a year, John, because I think it was summertime we were chatting. So I think we kind of made the whole thing official in maybe July, I want to say.
Okay.
Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, but for people that don't know, what did you win?
Oh, I won handsomefrank's Handsome Future Award
Yeah, the Handsome
2024.
Future Award.
I know.
Yeah. So this is for people who don't know, something we've done intermittently over the years. But when we identify somebody who we think has got huge potential and lots of promise, and somebody that we want to work with who perhaps doesn't have a huge amount of commercial work, we have this initiative called Handsome Futures. So we basically invite those people to work with us for a year, and during that time we try and help them with their portfolio and help shape them as artists, and essentially assist their kind of transition to becoming kind of, full-time commercial illustrators. But the hope is also that we find them real active life briefs.
Yeah.
And that has not been a problem for you at all.
No, it's been a wild ride since we signed.
It has, yeah. I think we've probably done... Well, how many projects do you think it is? I'm going to have a look, see if I can...
Oh, I don't want to aim too high or too low. I would say 7.
I think it's more.
Yeah, I think it's more.
I think it might have been 7 or 8. But it's been great.
That's a good guess then.
Yeah, you're not far off.
I mean, how have you found it? The whole process of...
I found it quite busy. I'm
Yeah.
not going to lie. Like, I think there was a few months where a few things were, they all kind of hit at once, didn't they, John?
Yes.
And
That's always the way.
Always the way, yeah.
And I haven't been used to that before now. And now it was kind of lucky if I'd got one job in a month, and then there was a few back to back. So I think my stamina took a hit for a little bit of it. But yeah, wouldn't have it any other way. It was like a dive in the deep end of the pool.
And they've been quite a mix as well. There've been
Yeah.
quite an array of types of jobs.
Yeah, totally. I think this has been my first experience doing any sort of like advertising. There was a bit of that.
Yeah.
Because beforehand it was all just editorial little spots and things like that. So yeah, it's been really testing me.
Yeah, well, we'll kind of circle back to this, but I think it's perhaps helpful to start by talking about your style and where that came from. For someone that doesn't know your work, and obviously we would, encourage anyone to go and look at your work and have a look at your profile, but how would you describe what you do?
So it's probably the question that you get asked the most, but it's one of the hardest things
to
to
answer.
answer.
Yeah.
But I would say definitely my work definitely has a nostalgic feel to it, but I also feel like it has a blend of a modern feel to it, so a blend of old and new. Definitely inspired by traditional printing techniques. I really enjoyed the screen printing studio and the risograph machine at university, so got really into that. And then when I discovered the iPad and realized I could do the same thing digitally without making a mess.
So you did a lot of screen printing originally?
Yeah, screen printing,
Nice.
risograph. But now I look back on it, I think I wish I'd done more of it. I ended up doing more painting by the end of my degree, but I enjoyed the screen printing. To be honest, I think I was just lazy at the time.
Well, so we had students in the other week, and I was saying to them, I was like, when you're at uni, go and use those resources, especially like screen printing. I did, and I remember my mum getting so cross because I dyed the bath red from trying to clean the screen. Like, use those art spaces that you've got at university to do all that messy stuff.
Yeah, but you won't be told at the time. That's
No,
the thing.
I know.
So even though I was really into it and did a fair bit, I still look back and think I could have done a lot more. And it was free. Well, pretty much anyway.
But you were a student.
Yeah, that's it. I know.
So this was in Dundee?
It was, yeah, Duncan of Jordanstown.
Okay.
So I had a pretty good reputation at the time to go to art school there. It was on my doorstep, so it was a no-brainer to apply.
Okay, so you grew up in Dundee?
I did, yeah. I grew up in Dundee, and when it came to applying to universities, for me it was always going to be art school of some kind. And like working class family, so my parents were like, it's Dundee Uni or it's Dundee Uni. So all eggs in one basket. Applied there. I think I got my offer when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, it was kind of mad because I got told constantly from tutors that they don't take school leavers. So I actually think I found out on the same week as my 18th birthday.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So you went and did a 3-year course there?
It was a 4-year course actually, because we had the foundation year was the first year, and then it was 3 years of specialism after that.
And on that foundation, you tried all sorts.
Yeah, everything really.
Did you know at the beginning of that art foundation year that you knew you would specialise in what you do now?
No, absolutely not. I went into art school thinking it was fine art because I think that's all you really know in high school, isn't it? Painting, still lifes, apples, bananas, all that type of thing.
Yeah.
That's all my portfolio was. So I didn't know that there was design options. But in our foundation course, we had like alternate blocks of 2 weeks art, 2 weeks design, backwards and forwards for a whole year. And I always looked forward to the 2-week blocks in design because I had kind of guidelines and guardrails for what they wanted at the end of the 2 weeks.
Interesting. So you didn't like complete freedom, you liked some kind of structure.
Yeah, which doesn't, like, you can't see that in any other part of my life, but when it comes to art, yeah, I like rules.
Right, yeah, that's interesting. And I think that is a big part of being a commercial illustrator. A good brief, I always think, is one that offers some creative freedom, but it has those kind of guardrails, like you say, to from which within you've got to work within.
Yeah, definitely.
That helps.
Yeah, I used to feel quite overwhelmed with the fine art blocks. Like I just didn't know what they wanted from me. Although weirdly enough, I always scored higher in the fine art ones than I did in the design.
Interesting.
But I just went with what I enjoyed in the end.
So 4 years of that.
Yeah.
And then you went on to do an MA. Was that straight away, or?
Yeah, pretty much. Again, it was my whole journey so far has been filled with these little strange moments of, I think they call it serendipity. So it was like same week as my 18th, got invited to DJ CAD, and then for the masters, I found out on degree show night of the honours degree that I was going to Cambridge. Yeah,
that you were going to. So you went to Cambridge, Ruskin University.
Yep.
And did an MA in
children's book illustration.
Okay.
I think it's called picture book illustration,
Picture book,
actually.
yeah. Yeah. And how was Cambridge? Obviously, I'm from Cambridge. We've talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Cambridge. I would honestly move back in a heartbeat. But I suppose I've got too many ties now at home. But yeah, I would love to move back. I fell in love with the place, and the university was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was easier by train to London as well, I have to say.
Yeah, well, I could be convinced. We'll just need to convince the husband next.
So you did 2 years at Cambridge, and COVID hit during that.
Yeah, about halfway through. So
Okay.
actually, I think the course was it's probably about a year and a half, but it felt closer to 2 years with the breaks in between. But yeah, halfway through. So yeah, a year in, COVID hit, and we weren't allowed to go back on campus, which was really awful.
Yeah, how did that affect your studies?
It was difficult. I think every part of life was difficult at that point, wasn't it, for everyone? But yeah, as a student who's waited for so long to go to this and be in person, and we'd all made such good friends at this point, all the classmates as well. So it was really hard for all of us to be separated. But we did our best, and the tutors did, the best they could given the circumstances. And we had almost like bi-daily Zooms with colleagues and classmates and things just to keep morale up. But yeah, it was hard, and I was working from a really small desk with not much room, with no screen printing available.
Not really the experience you moved
And is
from.
that where you
No.
picked up the iPad, or do you?
No, funnily enough, it wasn't. I was using Photoshop a lot then,
Yeah.
though. So I'd kind of managed to a process where I was kind of screen printing, but with like ink layers, scanning
Yeah.
them, photoshopping them in.
But it's kind of interesting that COVID forced you to kind of adopt a
Yeah.
digital style of the technique that you really liked.
Yeah, I think if you looked at it now, you would still think it was a lot less digital, but it was definitely the beginning
Yeah.
of working with those tools. Yeah. Beforehand, I think it was just scanning that I knew how to do.
So you came out of that, and at this point, are you thinking picture books are for you, or how has that course shaped your feelings about?
Yeah, so I applied to the picture book course because during the fourth year of my degree, I started making picture books. I think it was the one thing that kind of made me understand what illustration was, if that makes any sense.
What gives it a focus?
It does, and it's paired with text, and I realised that images and text are there to do a completely different role, and that really excited me. I found motivation in that. And I think because I hadn't explored many other mediums, that I just assumed picture books was the only thing that I wanted to do, just because of lack of experience.
I think the characters that you illustrate now really, it's obvious that you studied that.
What do you think?
Yeah, because you have that kind of emotive connection with the characters that you draw.
Wow.
And not everyone can draw a character, but they don't always convey as much emotion.
Well, it's nice to know that something came out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have read that Miroslav Sasek was like an influence of yours.
Yeah, huge.
When did you first see his work, and can you remember how that made you feel?
I think it was in third year of university. My teacher there, she's called Natalie Russell, who's a picture book illustrator. So I was so lucky to have her as one of my tutors. She brought in a big wad of her personal collection of picture books, spread them all out on the table. And it was in that moment I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, so I thought. So we had Miroslav Sasek, we had Wolf Erlbruch, we had, I think it's Alain Gray. Is that how you say it? Alain Gray, he's French. But yeah, all of these kind of books from the 60s, 70s.
Sort of mid-century.
Yeah, maybe slightly later than that. But yeah, I just got invested in them because they knew how to simplify, and I hadn't really seen that before. I always found it quite overwhelming sitting down having to illustrate something. There's just too many details to incorporate that I would just end up leaving the page blank. But I saw illustrators like that just simplify things down, and it just put me at ease.
Yeah. There's so much charm to that work, I think. And like Tom says, I do see that in your characters. They are, very charming. You can place personalities on them and perhaps read more into your illustrations than are actually on the page even, which is a real skill.
Well, that's great to hear. Thanks.
It's one of the things that, we talked about how we signed you and why, but I think that's what really appealed to us. We obviously see a lot of work and we get sent applications every week. But what really jumped out was you did seem to have this really nicely put together and kind of unique way of drawing and this aesthetic that had kind of mid-century elements to it and this texture. When did you hit upon that? Was that during the MA, or was that something that came later?
I think elements I hit upon during the MA. But honestly, I think it was only within the last year of us beginning to chat that it had really come together. I think that's why I felt so happy to send you the portfolio, because it had finally come to something.
You felt you were at that right point.
Yeah, I felt like I'd hit upon something that summer, or that spring anyway. And I just thought, you know what? I'll just message John and Tom and see what happens.
It's interesting because I think timing is really, really important, and this is something doesn't get talked about too often. But when it comes to applying to an agency, I think it is about waiting until you're ready. I think some people maybe jump that gun a little bit, and they're very, very keen to get an agent, and they just want to, progress, and that's totally understandable. But actually, if you take a bit of time to really kind of hone your skill, develop a style, get your portfolio to the right place, and then present it to an agency, I think you have a much better chance of catching their eye.
Yeah, that's probably true, because you also don't want to kind of only update a couple things and then it looks like the same portfolio pretty much, even if it's 6 months later. So yeah, accidentally, I think timing was really good here.
I do remember one of the bits of feedback we gave you was that at the time, a lot of your work was kind of small spots.
Yeah, white background.
Yeah, and I was saying, like, illustrate more scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and thank God for that, because it really changed everything. I started seeing it as you did, and I thought, okay, there is too much white. And it's fine maybe if it's on my own website when that's all there is, but when you see it up against all the other illustrators, for instance, on the agency website, I thought, okay, it does need to be bolder, it needs to be more colourful to kind of grab people's attention.
Well, I think especially online, like, work on a plain background can float a little bit, and we've found it over the years that if work doesn't feel kind of rooted, if it doesn't have a background, if it doesn't have colour behind it almost loses impact.
Totally, yeah.
So that was one of the things. But yeah, I'm interested, because I honestly don't remember, and some of it may have been not helpful and some of it might have been, but what are the big things that you feel you've learned throughout this mentoring process that you've implemented?
Well, definitely. I think there was a few things you said right in the beginning, Tom. I remember you saying them. The colour thing for sure. And the other one was no horizon lines.
Did I say that?
Yeah, you did.
Wow.
You said that you've got no horizon lines.
I do remember it being what I would describe as a brain dump email, where I just kind of look through, I just trawl your Instagram or your website and just comment what I'm thinking.
But I remember feeling like, I've been caught out. Like, they can see it. They've seen the weak spot. So I think there's horizon lines now. I've been trying.
Yeah, I think so.
But no, I think it was just a lack of confidence. Everything that you pinpointed in those initial emails, I think I knew I could do them. It was just a case of I've just never tried to push myself. I hit upon one thing and I stayed to it. So yeah, as soon as you sent that email, it just really pushed me out of my comfort zone.
Good.
So yeah, no horizon lines on coloured backgrounds. I think they were the main ones.
Yeah, okay. And that, well, hopefully, and it seems to be the case, that has opened you up to working in different areas, which is one of our kind of aims as an agency. As you know, we try to target design, advertising and branding jobs. Prior to working with us, was it mostly editorial stuff you were doing, or?
Yeah, totally, just editorial work. I think I'd done a few spots and maybe one or two full pages, but I don't think I'd even done a double spread or anything like that at this point, and it was only editorial work.
That's quite a natural journey though for a lot of graduates. Yeah, kind of start out, find your feet with editorial.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a good place to start because there's relatively low stakes, and that's, print media is kind of disposable. It comes and goes, whether you're working on a weekly or a monthly or even a daily newspaper. And secondary to that, there is a deadline. There is a finite deadline, which gives an artist an element of freedom because, an art director can't just keep sending feedback and asking for changes. You can't over finesse something because it has to go to print.
Yeah.
And I think there's something really, really lovely about that. So it's a really good place to cut your teeth.
It's also worth pointing out that one of the first commission that we ever had for handsomefrank was a spot illustration.
No
we
way.
found it recently, didn't we?
Yeah, it was commissioned by Andrew Diprose at Wired magazine.
Yeah.
Nice.
And from memory, I think it was £60. Yeah, and we got very excited. This is 15 years ago now.
Wow.
But I think it's even art directors as well. They need to gain their confidence.
Yeah, totally.
So if you give someone something small like that.
Yeah, and I think what I was finding, even in that small bit of experience just doing editorial, I was getting repeat clients as well. So I think I'd worked for Frankie magazine 4 or 5 times.
Oh yeah, for the Australian publication.
The Australian one. They're really good at hiring people that are kind of early days in their career. And then there was medicinal media, which I don't think they're doing as much now, but a couple of years ago they were doing a lot of weekly articles, mental health stuff, and they got me on for 2 or 3, I think. So yeah, I started to realise, okay, I maybe can do this. If I'm getting repeat business, something's working. And that also gave me a bit more confidence to speak to you guys, yeah.
So were you doing other jobs at this point?
Yeah, so I think up until quite recently, up until recently, at that point, I was working full-time in a jeweller's.
Right.
And then I got asked by my old university to come and tutor as well. So I was balancing tutoring, working in a jeweller's, and getting my portfolio seen and refined. So it was a busy time.
So what year were you helping tutoring?
That was last year.
No, sorry, what year were the students?
Oh, it started off with just first year.
Yeah.
But then the illustration department were like, could you come and help us as well?
That's great.
So I was working with second, third and fourth. So I got the whole spectrum.
I really want to do more tutoring.
I love it.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that's my kind of going into retirement plan. I just want to teach.
Nice.
Yeah. I felt like a bit of an imposter in the beginning.
And was that face-to-face?
Yeah, face-to-face, yeah.
Yeah, I think I would have to have a no Zoom clause in my contract.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's face-to-face or nothing.
Although you might not catch all the freshers flu via Zoom.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm okay with that.
So going back to your earlier work and starting to pick up these editorial commissions, was there a particular piece of work that really cut through for you and really kind of opened things up and you kind of look back to, or
is this before you guys came
along?
Yeah, the horse racing one was the one I remember.
Yeah, you did like that one. I remember you saying that at the time. I remember one that went quite big on Twitter or X was the spots I did that were kind of wine related. So there was a couple dating.
Oh, the couple, yeah.
And there was spaghetti, I think. That one went crazy on Twitter. And I landed I said it was only editorial. That was a lie. There was another one.
Oh yeah, that massive ad campaign that you forgot about.
No, I did some spot illustrations for Lumio Solar, which are an American solar panel company.
Solar panel companies love illustration.
Is that right?
We've done a few clean energy.
Yeah, they
projects.
love it.
Oh.
I think it's because it's visually so boring.
Yeah, because it's just grids.
Like
isn't
the
it?
photographs are just sort of really dull. So
totally.
It's crying out for illustration. Anyway, carry on.
But yeah, the art director saw those spots of the couple and the spaghetti and was like...
Was that a real couple? Is that someone you know? You just
No, it just came from my head, that one,
Okay.
yeah. And he was like, I want that illustrator to do it. The solar company. I did that, but I actually don't even know if it went to market in the end. But hey.
Sometimes the way, yeah.
But yeah, that was probably what cracked it for me. I got a lot more inquiries at that point.
Yeah, that's a bit of work I remember seeing, for sure. There's a word I can't pronounce, but I want to speak to you about this. I'm going to try and pronounce it. Synesthesia.
Oh, synesthesia.
Synesthesia.
Yeah, close.
Tell us about that. I've never heard of this before.
Have you not?
No.
I have no idea what this is.
Right, okay. So synesthesia, I hope I'm going to explain this right for the people that are listening, because it's not super uncommon, okay? But you basically feel and see colour associated with things that colour shouldn't be related to. So for instance, the name John, the name Tom, all has a colour in my head already.
Wow, what colour am I?
Brown.
Green.
That was my favourite colour as a kid.
No way.
How funny.
And Tom's blue.
Yeah, Tom is blue, I agree.
That was my favourite colour as a
And
kid.
it's the same with days of the week, months of the year, any number you could put
So what
together.
colour is Wednesday?
Well, yellow, easy. It just comes like that. And at school, when we had to, we'd get given coloured jotters for school subjects, and I would freak out if the colour wasn't the one that I had in my head.
So you've got these kind of arbitrary rules that in your head.
Yeah. Oh, here's the rules again. There's another theme emerging.
I get the words orange and green muddled up. Like I will see something green, but I'll go to say orange and vice versa.
I wonder if that's a touch of the synesthesia.
Stuart's waving for the other side of the office. He wants to know what colour he is.
You're purple.
Stuart is
Deep purple. There you go.
Yeah, like a royal purple.
That's crazy. So, okay, so the description I've got is when someone's brain associates colour with numbers, letters, smells,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
So, what's it like to be an illustrator who part of your daily life is picking colours
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
when
Yeah.
when you have all of these associations in
Yeah,
your
what
head?
if you had a brand colours that didn't go with
I
this?
think at that point you just need to I do try and separate myself from it and just do the job, but I'll be lying if I said I enjoyed it as much.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But no, it's hard. You kind of have to fight these inclines. Sometimes it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the piece I did recently for Virtuoso, the cruise ship, that one was kind of easy to me because it was summer palette. It's all warm yellow, and that one just came really naturally. But other ones I have to kind of go, but that... I feel like that's red, but the client wants it to be blue, and
It's pushing me in a different
Yeah.
direction, yeah.
but that's one of the main reasons why I started limiting my color palette so much in my images. I don't know if you can tell that when you look at my work, but I only tend to use maybe like 3, 4, 5 max colors in an image, because if I add more than that, I just start freaking
Is it
out.
because you find it overwhelming?
Yeah, I do.
I think that also falls back to your print background.
I think it's a bit of both.
Like, you rarely do a screen print more than 4 or 5
Yeah.
colours.
Well, it's chicken or the egg, really, because did I like screen printing because I like the restriction on color,
Oh.
So
I love this when our podcast tries to be a psychology podcast.
Well, and is this like an officially diagnosed...
I've never went to get it diagnosed.
Is it an actual
but-
word, or are you just
No, it is.
finding
There's
stuff?
research on it. I have applied to be a part of studies, but they haven't contacted me yet.
Well, if there's anyone out there who's studying this...
Well, there's an art therapist that I see on the school run. I'm going to ask her about this. She must know.
I
about
think
it.
it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
My brother's got it too. So I don't know what that says
How
about
did
my
you get
parents.
diagnosed?
I don't think they'd bother diagnosing
Oh,
it,
okay.
because it's not like it affects your learning or anything. In fact, I have called it, especially when I was a kid, I used to call it my superpower, because it would help me remember things. Like if a certain date, I would have a little color palette in my head for a date. If it was like 9th of July 1997, like it would be yellow, purple, blue.
Do you
And
dream
I
in
would remember
colours? Do you dream? Is this a feature in your dreams?
I don't know if I do.
Oh, it's hard to say. I think I do. Do you?
Do I dream in colours? No, I don't. I don't dream in colours.
Can I just say that of all the things I would have guessed talking about on this podcast,
This is not one of them.
It wouldn't have been this.
Well, there you go. I do my research, Tom.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. Good research.
So, since we've been working together, things have branched out a little bit from editorial. And I think, frustratingly, there's a couple of things we can't talk about. But
know.
it's fair to say you've done some branding work, some advertising stuff, a bit more design. You've done some packaging that will be on the shelves in supermarkets.
Yeah, I'm so excited for that one.
At some point in the future. You've done some animation. We can talk about that. But these new areas that you're working in, what have you learned? What have you enjoyed? What have you found challenging?
I thought I was a fast illustrator before signing with you guys. I thought, I can get that done in a couple of days. But it's not until those big jobs came in, I thought, you have to work fast.
Yeah.
I've had to pull a couple of late nights, very early mornings. And that, as I say, that came from someone that I thought that would be no problem.
Yeah.
So I think for me, timelines has been the biggest one.
Has that helped kind of streamline your process at all, or not?
Maybe I'm still working that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still ironing out some problems. I
Do you
think
think you procrastinate whilst illustrating?
all the time.
Okay, because I
Yeah.
think that's when you're under pressure from a deadline, you have to just eliminate that.
Yeah, totally.
And that's not just illustrate, that's everything in life. You can let something take 3 hours or 1 hour if you want it to.
That's true. That is true. But I think some of the deadlines we've been dealing with, there was literally no time to procrastinate. But there was, I felt almost like, is there even time to get the job done? But I think that's because I'm early in this journey, John. So
Yeah, I think it does. It's completely ridiculous, but there just seems to be an inverse relationship between the size of a project, and then perhaps the fee and the amount of money you get paid for it, and the length of the timeline. And often, I always say that we're the last ones to know. You know, if it's an ad campaign, for example, you know, often the agency's been talking about this idea, they've taken it to the client's bounced it back to them, they might have done a bit of, you know, kind of audience research, they've set upon something, they've booked the media space, you know, they've done all of these things, and then finally they think, oh, maybe we should talk to an illustrator. and we seem to be like the last ones to know, and it's almost like, you know, there's 10 days to do this. You know, and I always say to art directors and clients, and whenever we meet clients, you know, let us know as soon as possible, really, you know, even if it's just a maybe, even if it's just like a cursory conversation, let's you know, have that conversation as early as we can. But yeah, it's just one of those realities of the job.
Yeah, last people to know. Often we're the last to know, and you know, the deadline is set and it's often pretty short. So I think you're getting quicker though. I hope so. Yeah, I think it's a case of just less procrastinating, less mucking around. I used to spend a bit more time on making sure like the concept was the only and the best solution. And I think some deadlines actually just don't allow for that. Yeah. It's just get the job done, and if it works, it works. You wish you'd had another week, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's a shame when that is. I do find it annoying when jobs get in touch, and it's. You know, the ideas are really nice, the brief's really nice, the project's really nice, the budget's really nice, but the timings are awful. And you just think, like, of all the things to sacrifice is the time required to actually do the work.
Yeah.
I do find that frustrating, but that is just the reality of working as a commercial artist.
Yeah, it's part of the job, isn't it?
Yeah, so, and it's not, I think that's all industries.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll get better at that. But yes, as I was saying, I think I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I like to know that the solution that I came up with was the best for the problem. But when it is a quick deadline and I've just had to do the job, actually when the job's done and I look back on it, I'm usually pretty pleased with it. So it's not a case that I look at it and, you know, regret not having longer or not having explored extra ones during the night to get it done. Actually, most of the time, a short deadline does a really good job of the work.
Yeah. I think sometimes too much time is also an issue on the flip side.
Totally, yeah, I would agree with that. There's a real sweet spot, isn't there, when it comes to that. Yeah.
So, I mean, as somebody who has, you know, established yourself relatively recently, what advice would you offer to somebody who's in a position that you were perhaps 2 years ago? You know, what do you think's really helped you kind of start to win these bigger projects?
I think just speak to people. You know, and keep on working on a portfolio. Draw stuff that you want to draw. But I think what got me to this point was just reaching out to people and being quite ballsy. Yeah, I'd reach out to artists that I admired that were, you know, way too big to reply to me, but they did.
And ask advice? Or
ask for advice, or I'm looking for clients. How do I do this? Or how do you get people to reply to you? You know, what kind of emails are you sending? I had someone that sent me a template for an email to send to people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, someone would send me their portfolio. I mean, a template to edit, obviously. Another person sent me their portfolio to see how they'd laid it out. People are really helpful if you write a nice message.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think people are way more willing to share and help. And I think that's one of the really, I mean, I always found we were basically outsiders to this industry. You know, we set up an illustration agency, but we didn't have a background in this sector. And everyone was so friendly and so open and happy to share. And, you know, if you ask politely, people will tell you.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the creative industry is if one person does well, we all do well out of it, you know? Like if one company hires an illustrator, everyone else starts doing it. So it's this kind of snowball effect. And I think that's why people are so happy to help each other here. So yeah, we're lucky to have such a nice community.
I thought about this, but yeah, illustration is less, like photography is really competitive.
It is, isn't it? I've seen that.
Photographers all do kind of secretly hate each other. I don't think that's the case with illustration.
No, I've always found it a very warm, sharing kind of sector to be in.
We're just nice people.
Yeah, I don't have that feeling that it's overly competitive or anything. I mean, when I look at other people's work, it fills me with inspiration rather than envy.
So, who are the people that you really admire and look to? Well, I mean, we talked about some of historical book illustrators, but who working right now are people that you look up to?
I mean, there's a few Handsome Frank people that I really like. We were talking about it earlier, but I'm obsessed with Tobias Hall's work.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing. And I'm really, actually, there is a bit of envy because I really wish I was better at lettering and understanding how type can be incorporated into illustration.
Yeah, which is a very different skill set.
Yeah, my brain doesn't work like that. So I look at his work to kind of understand how I could make lettering more illustrative. Still working on that.
I mean, I would say that Toby is quite unique in terms of the fact he is both a lettering artist and an amazing illustrator, and there's not many people I've seen that can do both. I think that's something that's really unique and special about him.
He's the first person in 15 years that we've repped that can, to a very high level, do both.
Yeah, lots of people tend to. So I think a lot of illustrators, if you can't do lettering, is not necessarily something to worry about, because often on a bigger project, someone will separately handle the lettering anyway.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But yeah, it is amazing when you have somebody that can do both.
The other thing we've done recently is animation.
I know, that was incredible.
Yeah.
It was so surreal seeing that. When it came in the inbox, I was like jumping up and down.
Yeah, so for people listening, we believe strongly that every illustrator should have an example of animation in their portfolio. It's something that art directors, if they can't see it, they'll just assume that you can't. Well, first of all art directors, when they see someone's work animated, they think that the illustrator animated it themselves. So we get emailed all the time, does Joe Bloggs animate? So we have to kind of explain, no, it's done by an animator. But as I say, it's really important to get something in your portfolio that was animated. So we teamed you with Vanya Animation Studio, who are based in Bucharest.
Yeah.
And they picked your illustration?
I don't know how that worked, actually.
I think there was a bit of back and forth, wasn't there? But everyone liked the fact that this particular piece had kind of White Lotus sort of vibes. It's very summery, isn't it? And and again, it's a static illustration that you created, but these characters are just full of personality, and you look at that still illustration and you're projecting all these personalities on these characters, and what they did really well is they kind of captured that and brought it to life.
Yeah, they did such an amazing job. When we first got that email through from Anka, from Vanya, explaining how she envisioned the animation would be, like how the people would interact with one another, I just thought to myself, like, that's exactly how I imagined it in my head.
Yeah,
so
good.
It's amazing that a still image can, as you say, project those things onto other people.
And that's what animators are really good at, is looking at an illustration. And so that illustration already conveyed emotion, like we talked about, but an animator will be able to kind of draw out more emotion from it.
Yeah, and they did. They took it to a whole new level, didn't they? And
the audio on it was really nice as well.
The audio was fantastic.
A little chuckle.
Yeah, it's almost quite an evil laugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it works so well, especially with the White Lotus nod.
And in terms of, because I appreciate you'd already created that illustration without knowing it needed to be animated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know you've kind of learnt about layering and stuff like that. I presume you had to kind of draw extra bits.
Yeah, so I had to kind of redraw the background without any of the characters in it.
Yeah.
I think I'm quite lucky in the way I create illustrations is reasonably simple in terms of shapes and things, so it wasn't too difficult. I just had to fill in
the back,
more
the
sea. And then I would draw the characters on a separate layer on their own, and I think Anka asked me for a few different arms and legs as well.
Yeah. Limbs always the one.
Yeah.
But you already had the file layered.
Yes, but it still took a bit of work
Okay.
because if you can imagine a screen print or a risograph, that's how the illustration was.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that
yellow
has,
was on one layer.
Yeah, so it would overlay on characters and background. So I had to kind of separate everything.
I see, right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the whole image was kind of layered up in 3.
Is that just so it helps you with colouring?
I don't know why I do it. It's just the way my brain works.
Okay, so you basically draw. Are you drawing? So your initial roughs, are you drawing colour or black and white?
Initial roughs are usually just black and white.
So, or a shade of grey.
Yeah.
So when you're drawing that shade of grey, you're already thinking, okay, but that's going to be red.
Honestly, if
Not red on a Tuesday, Tom.
Yeah, but you're then drawing all of those elements that are going to be that colour.
Yeah.
So it could be like, the person's trousers and then, I don't know, a tree or...
Yeah, you should see, like, for instance, the blue layer on that. It's got the sea, it's got trousers, it's got a book, it's got everything on the same layer.
I mean, I haven't asked everyone, but I don't know of another illustrator that works in that way. That's not a bad thing.
If you have looked at separations for a risograph file, that's exactly what all my illustrations look like.
Yeah, but you would do the illustration and then separate it, no?
Yeah, I suppose
you kind of
would.
select all the elements.
So it's like a reverse.
So even in my head, I'm like...
Reverse riso.
Yeah, even in my head, I'm thinking of the keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
It'd be a...
Yeah. So I'm probably giving myself extra work. That is maybe what's going to stop happening.
Okay, maybe that's why it's taking so long.
Yeah, maybe. But
Yeah,
no, I
this is
really
good.
like the process. It's quite meditative, therapeutic to do it that way. And as I say, that's the way I learned how to make colour work for me, was in those kind of risographic layers. So I just can't break free from it yet.
So if a client then gets in touch and says, oh, I love that tree, but can you make it a different colour?
I can do it because there's like colour, like shape select. So like on the layer, not everything is blue is touching each other. So usually it's okay.
Okay.
But does it, to you, does that feel off?
Well, I would have to then put it on that colour layer.
Okay, right.
Honestly, the layers are so neat and
Who knew?
organised. Yeah.
Do you label your layers as well?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Wow.
And I've recently, I stayed up way too late one night and filed all my Mac files as well. So everything's in order.
Very organised.
Yeah.
It's good to hear. Well, we asked people on Instagram for any questions, and I think we've had more questions from you than we've ever had.
That's
so we should probably go
crazy.
through a few of these. Some of it we may have covered, but some of it, somebody's asked here, how did you know you were ready for the leap into full-time illustration?
Well, it's a good question. I think I knew when I was starting to feel like I had to quit my job, you know? So as I say, I was balancing 2 part-time jobs plus illustration. And I was like, one of these part-time jobs has got to go. And as soon as one went, I thought, okay, now I'm struggling with the other one because it's like a snowball.
Yeah.
I think the analogy I always use, when you're cooking and you've got kind of 3 or 4 pans on, and you're struggling to kind of focus on all of them, that's when you know you need to just turn one off.
That's it. And the last thing you want to do is turn down the thing that you want to be doing the most. So yeah, handed my notice in to one of the jobs, and before I knew it, I was ready to do the same with the other one. So yeah.
Another question here. How do you handle creative blocks or days when there's no inspiration?
Honestly, some days there are just not the days, unless it's for client work and you've got a really tight timeline. Sometimes I just take the day off. I had an illustration that has been living in my head rent free for about 2 months, and every time I sat down to try and do it, it just wasn't working, and I left it for weeks, and then I came back to it, and it was just a couple of days ago it just came to fruition, and it was a dreamlike state. It just happened.
Because sometimes you can't force it.
You just can't force it. But on the days where you have to work and there's a bit of a mental block, I normally just put on an audiobook and just tell myself, you've got to do it. That's it.
Bit of discipline.
Yeah, tune out the world and lock in and get it done. Yeah.
And where do you look for inspiration when you're, going through a phase of, lacking ideas or feel like you've hit a bit of a dead end? What are your go-tos?
I've got a really good Pinterest document of vintage people.
Okay.
And they're always doing interesting things. I try not to spend too much time looking at other artwork as much as I can, just because I could be so easily swayed. And I go, I love that colour palette, I'm going to try something like that. And before I know it, it's not me. So usually my inspiration is, old photographs. And now Pinterest has got a really good algorithm now where I just go on it and it's got new ones every single time.
People are always surprised to hear this, but Pinterest is one of the biggest referral sites to,
is that right?
to the Handsome Frank site.
Second biggest referral.
We get a huge amount. So I presume that's because people are pinning images they see on Handsome Frank and putting them on Pinterest, and then people are searching and finding it. But yeah, it's a really, it's a funny one, Pinterest, because it kind of floats under the radar a little bit as a platform. But I think it is a really useful tool for visual people.
I think it's a refined version of Google Images.
Yeah,
Google
pretty much.
Images, if you search for something, you get a load of rubbish.
Yeah.
Pinterest is the kind of the good stuff.
Yeah, and it's tailored to what you want to see almost. Yeah, so if you go on my Pinterest, it's usually like 1950s cars and people outside of those like Sunday shops, you know.
I had a really nicely curated Pinterest.
Oh, I know what you're going to
page,
say.
And then my daughter.
Yes. That's Pokemon.
So now it's pure
Oh,
Taylor
no.
Swift, you know, like Stranger Things, pink teenage bedrooms.
Yeah, my children will ruin my Netflix algorithm. It's now all...
Do you not have a separate kids bit for them?
But I do now, yeah. No, there
Well,
was...
the problem is they don't want to watch the
No,
kids
there was
show
one
anymore.
thing
Yeah.
that was... I think you had to be, I don't know, 16 to watch it.
Right, okay.
So obviously they just go into my account. It's ruined it.
Yeah, Spotify as well. Don't have kids.
No, that's the
Terrible for
moral
your
of the story.
We got a question from Tommy Parker who says, what are your favourite and least favourite subjects to work? Let's talk about least favourite first. What have you drawn that you've just struggled with or not enjoyed?
Kind of busy scenes. I'm trying to do that more.
Well, I think that's what you were saying about that simplifying
Yeah.
things. And you
Yeah.
do that really well. Like the musical instruments you sent me recently.
Thank you.
That does that job of the simplification. Don't know if that's a thing. But yeah, that's interesting for you to then say it's the busy scene.
The busy scenes, yeah, because there's just more to simplify, isn't there?
But I think, like for example, Anna Kovetches, one of our illustrators, who is a very simplistic style. That's a good way, good thing. But she will take busy scenes, you know, mountains, people skiing, stuff like that, and it's really simplifying it in basic shapes and forms.
Yeah, so it can be done for sure. But it does stress me out when I go, oh, I'm going to need to simplify 20 people for this image to work.
I did see recently, because recently you've been doing some kind of travel inspired images. And I thought it was really funny. You posted something on X,
Yeah.
and somebody sort of came for you about the shadows,
shadows.
which I thought was really mean.
I hope they didn't mean it like that. I don't think they did. But yeah, I took it really to heart because, as you know, the creative community is really kind.
Yeah.
I've always found it kind, and I never really understood the whole don't read the comments. I'm like, I know my comments are lovely, but this was the first time I was like, oh God, I feel really insecure.
I was looking at it and I was thinking, I think these shadows are fine.
Well, I went back
It's
and I
worked.
reworked it a little bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
I looked at them. I will with the art director now. There were a few that were off. Of that kind of consistent light point.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just classic Twitter, right?
It is. It's the difference between Twitter and Instagram, I think.
You should have basically posted and said, "Please find something wrong with this illustration."
Yeah, Twitter just seems to be a bit more angry
Yeah,
in general.
I remember years ago I designed something when I worked as a designer, and then in those days you'd then hand it to the developer and they would turn it into the web page. And I do remember this developer going, "Oh yeah, I fixed the shadow on one of your layers, by the way," and just like really sort of passive aggressive.
Yeah, that is passive aggressive.
And being like, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for that. So that's, I don't know.
And what about your favourite thing to draw?
Oh, favourite thing to draw? Things that are moving, you know?
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
So,
That's not an answer I expected.
no? Really?
Most do you like?
What did you think I was going to say? I'm interested now.
Wine.
Well, yeah, there is a lot
yeah.
of wine. We talked about your love
I
of wine at
know.
lunch, but there was a lot of wine. And yeah, I would have thought characters, people.
Yeah. Well, even better if they're the ones moving.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. People
So-
in motion.
People
I
in
think
motion.
that's really good. I mean, if I say all the time, like you need to kind of pick a subject
Yeah.
and illustrate it, but that you can apply that to so much stuff.
Yeah, like I think, someone in a car, someone on a bike, someone on a skateboard, they always just get me excited because I love it's a hard thing to do. It's a challenge. How do you make it look like they're moving? And I love kind of like a
The racehorses.
skewed line.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I enjoy, the racehorses, exactly. That's a strange one. Everyone says horses are really difficult to draw, but
It's the legs.
I really enjoyed them. Although my husband's granddad told me that the tail on one of those horses isn't quite right.
Oh.
So don't get him a
Thanks,
Twitter
Granddad.
account because he'd be the worst.
don't get him on X.
Yeah.
Maybe it was him under a pseudonym.
But no, I like the horses moving as well.
We've got a question. Well, this is actually from Dario, who's here in the office. But as he pointed out, your Severance artwork was recently shared by Adam Scott.
I
who
know.
stars in the show.
It was crazy.
That must have been quite a moment.
Yeah, I got off my sofa and like shouted through to the other room, "Oh my God, Adam Scott's seen my illustrations," which is just mad. Like watching that every Friday night and to think that his eyes have just seen some
I've
of my
seen
artwork.
your work. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, you love the show, right?
Love it. Absolutely obsessed.
I can't get into it. It's just like my guilty secret at the moment.
We're going to have a talk after this, I think,
Yeah,
John.
I am trying.
What's
I am
it on?
trying. It's on Apple, I believe.
That's why I haven't watched it.
I'd say it's worth getting Apple
It's
TV
worth the
for.
subscription.
I know, but everyone said that about Slow Horses. And I'm like, yeah.
I've not tried that one yet.
Slow Horses is filmed right here.
No
in
way.
Charterhouse Square, yeah. So
That's pretty cool.
yeah, you have to watch that, Tom. It's on
I
the
know.
doorstep.
I tried to. I watched a couple.
Yeah.
I just can't sit still for long enough.
Well, I will try again with Severance, but yeah, there must be quite a buzz to get your work shared. The question was actually, what office perk should Handsome Frank introduce? I don't really understand this question because I haven't seen the show. So
Waffle party, melon
Waffle
party.
party?
No, what was Defiant Jazz?
That sounds like something.
That's the
Define
one.
Jazz.
Defiant Jazz.
Sounds like the Mighty Boosh now.
Dario, what's it called? What does he call the party? Defiant Jazz. Was it just that? Yeah, Defiant
Okay.
Jazz.
All right, I need to persevere here.
Yeah.
And maybe some finger. What are those finger toys called, Dario?
Oh, the finger trap.
Finger traps.
Oh, finger traps are great.
Yeah, we need to bring in some Handsome Frank logo finger
All
traps.
right, we'll get some. That'd be a good little client gift, wouldn't it?
Oh,
Illustrated finger traps.
Yeah, but you know what? You go to an event and you trap the fingers of clients.
with an art director and an
and then
illustrator.
draw them back.
No, instead of a business card, you just give them the finger traps.
Yeah.
This is genius.
Yeah, and we've got insurance, so they can't sue us. So I like that idea.
Yeah, there you go.
Excellent. Okay. Well, there we go. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us.
No, thanks for having me.
I'm sort of thinking about you now, getting on that train.
You're it's the apart from America, this is the furthest that I think an illustrator has travelled by train
Really?
for the podcast.
It's not that bad either. I'd do it all the time if I could. Yeah, say 4.5 hours.
That is good.
It's not bad at all.
So you'll be tucked up in your carriage and then home for dawn.
Home for dawn.
I think
yeah.
you should blog this.
I
And I
will.
think also maybe this should inspire an illustration of some sort, you know.
Maybe it will. Yeah, I said people moving. Yeah, you could just see them
Motion,
falling out
isn't
the
it?
bed.
It's very Wes Anderson, Sleeper Train. There's lots of... I don't know whether the... what's the train called? Did you say
The Caledonian Sleeper.
the Caledonian Sleeper? I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's...
That
gonna
sounds like a series on Apple.
Is it going to be quite the
Does, doesn't
Darjeeling
it? Like
Express?
a murder mystery
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
Caledonian Sleeper. Yeah. But no, if there are pictures to see of the sleepers tonight, it means I didn't get any sleep.
Any sleep. All right. Well, fingers crossed. We hope there's no murders. We hope some illustrations come out of this. And thank you very much for coming in to see us.
No, thanks you guys. Thanks so much.
And if you'd like to know more about Handsome Frank and our artists, check out our website, handsomefrank.com.
Thanks very much for listening.
Handsome Frank.
Do you dream in colours?
I don't know if I do.
Oh, it's hard to say. Do you?
Do I dream in colours? No.